This video is brought to you in part by the patrons of the Lazy Eyebrow, and from the comments and watch time from viewers like you. Thank you!
You wanted to see me, Doc?
Yes, Prime, sit down.
Right. So what's this all about?
Well, your test results are back in, and it's not good. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Prime, but you've really let yourself go.
Well, I can't help that. Since the humans got whatever it is going on, there hasn't been much activity and we're all just sitting around, drinking our fill of energon, waiting for something interesting to happen.
Well, I'm putting you on a strict 2-cube diet until you can slip those parts down to a healthy vehicle shape. Can you even transform anymore?
Sure I can. I just don't feel like it right now.
Alright, well, with that out of the way, I wanted to talk to you about something else.
Huh?
I've been doing routine physicals on the crew in the abundance of downtime, and I've made an unsettling discovery. These are the scans of the Protectobots, Power Glide, Bumblebee, and Windcharger.
What am I looking at here?
Everything about them. The strength of their joints, the tolerances of their moving parts, right down to the quality of their molecular structure. It's off.
In what way?
Here's a comparison to our molecular structure. It's tight-knit. The density of our body panels is strong. Theirs are brittle and weak. It's not the profile I have stored on their file.
So what are you suggesting?
This is a classic case of Narcoffian syndrome, which means we have imposters on board.
Imposters? On my ark? Never! Call one of them in. Let's get to the bottom of this.
Well, Streetwise and Blades are in the science lab next door. I'm sure they can explain themselves. Streetwise, Blades, could you two step into my office for a minute?
Yeah, Doc?
There's something on your last physical that has Optimus and I concerned.
And what would that be?
Your cybernetic code. It just doesn't match up with what it should be.
Yeah, and could you explain why when I give you an assignment and it's marked off as complete, an inspection shows it was never done?
Well, you see...
Alright, what happened?
Yeah, I was busy aligning the engines. This better be good.
Someone has shot Ratchet and Optimus.
Looks like a double homicide. Where was everyone?
Streetwise and I were in the science lab when we heard gunshots. But when we came over, we didn't see anyone.
I think it was Hot Rod.
Me? Why me?
Because Optimus is dead.
Come on! Just because Optimus is dead does not mean I killed him. Why do I always get blamed for this?
Wait, weren't you working on the power couplings in the vents a moment ago?
That means nothing!
I see Hot Rod did it.
Works for me. Are we all in agreement?
Yeah,
that's
definitely for me.
Wait, we have imposters on board?
Why hello YouTube, greetings from the Lazy Eyebrow to the review of 2.5 figures. This is the review for Siege and Earthrise Ratchet, and I sort of mention the medic because if I don't, people are going to ask. Ratchet has sort of a troubled history these last 18 months in terms of availability. I mean, Ironhide came out wave 3 of Siege, and for the most part, he was a pretty okay figure. Ratchet was announced as a Walgreens exclusive, and we were like, alright, sure, why not? In Canada, he was an EB exclusive, but the point remains, he was an exclusive. Then Earthrise came around, and they announced that they took Siege, did a massive and complete overhaul, and Ironhide and Prowl are going to come out as Amazon exclusives. Oh, and Ratchet is also going to be a thing. And it's going to come with a figure that references a character that appeared in 4 to 6 frames of animation of G1 Season 3 that was just the animators needing to populate the scene, but they drew RC but green. So here you go. $60 please for the figure you really want. And that's not even going to the fact that it was impossible to actually get in Canada as, again, it was an Amazon exclusive. But seemingly only to the States as there was no pre-order page for Canada. And switching to the US site wouldn't let me pre-order because I had a Canadian address listed. So how do I have 2 Ratchets sitting in front of me, you ask? Well, a friend on Twitter sent me a direct link to the Paradron pre-order page on the Canadian site through Hasbro directly. I was able to put my pre-order down, and that was it. I was able to see the order in my history, but I was never allowed to click it for more details. So I figured, well, I guess we'll just see what happens. I mean, it's not charging enough it actually ships. And 3 weeks ago, it showed up. It shipped and showed up, and I am flabbergasted. Completely out of the blue. Do I have Ironhide, Prowl, Derringer Ramjet? Figures I pre-ordered in July and was slated for mid-September on the Canadian site? Lol, no. But hey, here's Ratchet. So with that long-winded story out of the way, let's talk about Ratchet. There's no beating around the bush here. These are for all intents and purposes the same figure, with retooling here and there and different accessories. Let's briefly talk about Siege. For a Cybertronian look, I think they did a decent job. I mean, it's Cybertronian. They could tell us it looked like anything. We'd be like, yep, I've never been to Cybertron, so sure, I believe that. I mean, in War 4 and Fall of Cybertron, both he and Ironhide looked like different takes on armored SUVs more than they looked like a keyboard minivan. And I can't help but feel the movies had something to do with that artistic direction, as they were big and popular at the time. As far as the Siege ones go, though, there was this gap up here, and the feet didn't look fantastic, but like I said, you throw the Cybertron excuse in front of that, and it's like, understandable, have a good day. I rather liked how the little design changes to the figure's tooling to separate is not just an Ironhide repaint, though. The front bumper got a bit of a sleeker look instead of looking like something to ram its way through a mob of Shocktricons. The shoulder got retooled to look more like a light bar for EMS response vehicles. Like, between the two, I really appreciate the small changes they did to differentiate them. Speaking of retools, Earthrise Ratchet. I am both impressed and shocked just how much they were able to change to a base figure to make it look like an entirely different vehicle. As for what hasn't added anything changed to it, the parts that become the legs and the feet. Everything else has had entirely new tooling. But wait, what about the wheels? And that's kind of the dumb part. Siege Ratchet back last year had the tooling changed to have different designs in the wheels. So Earthrise Ironhide and Ratchet get to use the Siege Ironhide tooling for the wheels. Isn't that fun? Like, I'm all for retooling to get things looking at least slightly different. And as far as they got for the Earthrise van mold, I think they did a good job. Like, let's not bash on this and throw the figure around too much on our table. I don't feel like it's the fault of the designers in the slightest. I'm almost certain they were given a budget and were told, yeah, make an Earth mode out of this. So what did they do? They completely redesigned the front bumper, the front panel where the headlights sit, the windshield, the side panel that covers the thighs. The shoulders are a slight Siege Ironhide retool to get them a smoother look. The paneling for the back windows, and to top it all off, they included a whole roof of the vehicle that A, covers up the gap I mentioned not liking about Siege, B, bulks up the vehicle mode to make it look like a proper homage to the 1978 Cherry Vinette, and C, it comes off almost like an homage to the G1 in the Med Sled. People were pleased when the masterpieces came with a tray that mimicked the reference, but now we have it actually part of the transformation this time while giving us a semi-decent vehicle mode, and I feel like the majority are upset that once again we get parts forming. I, for one, don't agree about disliking it. What I do dislike, however, are the feet at the back. And this is where my theory of running out of budget comes in. Like, it's crazy expensive to make a new casting mold for multiple factories to make a new toy, thus why they've clearly reused what was existing for the shins, wheels, and core structure. However, like I mentioned, I'm surprised just how much work went into completely redesigning the vehicle to make it look like almost nothing that it came from. That's astounding, and my theory is that after doing all that work and designing the roof piece to make it coherently assembled together, they may have been out of budget and the next best thing was to leave the feet the way they were. And quite frankly, if that and the wheels were the only sacrifice, I'm kind of okay with that, because both of those things are replaceable. Now, fair warning, I also painted this. I did my best, and it didn't quite turn out as well as I hoped. I'm aware of it. I'm not touting the paint as my best work, as I've improved since doing this. I might come back and overhaul the figure, but I couldn't wait to review it, so here we go. Here are my modifications to Earthrise Ratchet. First and foremost, paint. I blacked out not just the windshield, but all the side windows as well. I debated on whether or not to paint the inside or the outside of the glass, but in the end decided on exterior paint, as the other way wouldn't match the back windows since those weren't transparent. I painted a red stripe that continues down the entire side of the vehicle, as for some reason the original just up and stopped at the end of this panel. I taped this off, but my taping skills weren't fantastic at this point, and I got a little squirrely at the end, which is also what happened up here. I painted a red cross that eventually became the shoulders, but it didn't turn out so great. And of course I chromed up the brake rotors, and the coilover suspension, because it's me. Of course I did. I'm never going to see these, but it's the fact that I know it's painted makes me happy. As for actual modifications to the vehicle, I've printed new wheels from Sam's Forge, chromed out the rims and painted the tire parts flat black. These were printed in resin with the actual peg that slots into the wheel made of PLA plastic, since that's more flexible and therefore sturdier. And finally, what I'm most proud of, new back doors. I designed these myself to closely emulate the rear end of the Cherry Vinette, but stylized slightly to match up with the current proportions of the Earthrise van mold. Do I wish this had been done from the start? Of course I do. And quite frankly, I'm surprised they didn't up the price of the figures to Voyager price points and include all these extra parts. I mean, they did that for Optimus. They retooled the Voyager Siege, redesigned the cab, added a trailer, and sold it back to us at a leader price point. Why couldn't they have done that here? Complete the retooling and everything. I mean, if you want these feet, which a good chunk of people do, and have paid for these prints to have this done, clearly it shows that people would have happily paid extra for a complete figure. But that's neither here nor there, as that's not what happened. Long story short, I feel like this was an executive decision to squeeze blood from a stone and told the designers to make this an Earth thing. They did their best, and this was as far as they could get, and they did a fantastic job, but almost like they left the easily replaceable parts alone so that fans could finish the job if they chose. Like, look at this. Anything that got pinned in place has had a complete overhaul, and they just look so great and distinct next to each other. I'm just really impressed at how much work was done to make each figure its own. Even without the detachable roof, it almost looks like a completely different figure, and that's awesome. Now, one thing about my design is I didn't add holes in the back for 5mm compatibility. Is that a big deal? In my eyes, no. I kind of prefer it this way considering vehicle accuracy and all, but I get some people wouldn't like this. As is, there's ports up top that should accept 5mm ports, but in this mode they're retracted too far in so that the only thing that can even attempt to fit in there is Jetfire's third rocket boost, and poorly at that. Unfortunately, a rocket-powered fan just wasn't meant to be. As for what I think of the ports themselves, I actually don't mind them. They're kind of like vents in the roof to let the heat escape. My dad owns a huge full-size Chevrolet van, and that's kind of one of the things I remember quite prominently was the heat vent you could open on summer days. I mean, it didn't look like this, but I can easily pretend that this is what it's supposed to be in alt mode of this particular vehicle. On another note, as mentioned before, Earthrise Ratchet comes in a 2-pack that forces you to spend more money on a figure Lazy Eyebrow didn't want just to get the figure you do. This is Lifeline, a green recolored RC based on 5 frames of 1986 animation. And if nothing else, it gives me a chance to see what Earthrise RC is like, as I had, still have, and will continue to have zero inclination to pick up this mold on its own. This is just such a bad figure. Like, sure, you could say it looks like RC, and RC has always had a backpack, and this is how RC should look, but I say nay. A better RC has existed previously, and they really should have just reissued that. Here is the Takara Legends RC, a vehicle whose proportions are so much better, and partly the reason why I'm not getting into this too much. I want to cover this in a review one day, though I just haven't yet. Like, looking at these two vehicles, which do you think looks better? The one with the smooth, curved, sleek alt mode whose parts actually become parts of the robot? Or the one with the incomplete back bumper with a crumpled up humanoid in there that you could commonly mistake for a novelty mouse? In short, I think this take on RC is a huge disappointment, and I wouldn't even own a version of it if Hasbro hadn't shoehorned this reference into the pack, jacking up the price in the process. As for the other features on Ratchet, there's a 5mm port held within the light bar, and said light bar can detach to reveal 2 ports that it slots into. If you have shoulder cannons from any of the other car bots, these can slot in here, as well as any 5mm accessory that can slot into the back. And there we have it, 3 spots for accessories on the roof. For size comparison, blue streaks with their respective lined ratchets, bug bite and cliff jumper, green RC and pink RC, and hoist and sideswipe. Like, honestly, it's insane just how incredible everything has been lately. Like, look at this lineup. I haven't seen anything look this good in a lineup of cars like this since Masterpiece, and this is generation scale. That's amazing. Alright, probably talked your ear off about car modes for long enough. Let's take a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll head on into Transformation.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
Oh, darn it.
What's wrong, Prime?
I'm trying to buy more of our Autobots from online retailers, but it's just too dang expensive.
Have you tried allmatrixdfm.com?
No, as a matter of fact, I haven't. What is it?
It's an online marketplace devoted to the sale of all things Transformers based out of the United States. Prices are cheaper there as the selling fees are lower than prices like eBay, but because they still use PayPal, you get the same buyer protection as you would on eBay, with free shipping on all orders within the US.
That sounds pretty good. But what if I have something just taking up space around here and I want to sell it?
Well, you can do that too. Account creation is free, and any sale or order you make enters you in a giveaway on the site.
That sounds awesome.
allmatrixdfm.com. Go start selling today for free.
We now return to the Transformers.
Alrighty, welcome back. Start by opening up the windshield, pull these windows up, and remove the roof section. Then from there, it's pretty much the same thing for both figures. Open up the leg panels, move the arms up, swing the side panels around, separate the legs, and fold the upper leg panels down. If you printed my set of feet, the rear windows will rotate inwards to form toes. Open up the bumper and rotate around the front section. Put the arms to the side and rotate them down. Move the bumper up to lock the shoulder in place, then rotate the neck up into the front of the vehicle to lock the bumper in place, and finally plug the windshield to the tabs on the chest. That locking system on the chest I feel is super elegant, but simple and keeps everything locked together, and I really, really like it. On the roof of the Earthrise version, fold in the windows and slide this peg down, and you're done. On Lifeline, remove the majority of the vehicle and straighten out the legs from whatever they were crammed in there. Fold down the entire front of the vehicle, fold in the wheels and nose of the car, then pull down the arms. This is more or less the transformation. If Hasbro didn't care enough to give us a proper transformation, I'm not going to care enough to attempt to put the limbs where they probably were intended to go. So here's what both these figures look like stock. Quite frankly, I don't get why more red wasn't added to Earthrise. Like, I get for toon accuracy, Ratchet is primarily white robot with licensed red crosses on his shoulders, but this comes across as really bland. You get the slightest hint of red on the shoulders and a little bit of striping from the vehicle and the legs there. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm not entirely fond of Siege's placement of red there either. Feels haphazard and splotchy. Just random bits of red everywhere with no aesthetic cohesiveness to any of it. Now here's Earthrise after customization. Again, please excuse how poorly the quality of the paint turned out. Just talking more of a concept of what I did, I guess. Anyway, a few things I did. Added the red crosses back in. Even those alone adds a ton to the overall look as it really breaks up the vast amount of white. Darkening and extending the red stripe to the hinge as well also adds red in a coordinated way. And finally, the windows. It's a personal choice, but I don't like blue windows. I was worried that by blackening out the rear windows that the shins would look weird, and maybe they still do to you, the viewer, but I feel it helps break up just how much white was there, and I personally like it. As for differences between the two figures, each of them have a new head sculpt. Siege kind of giving me the impression that it's a younger version of the Doc, and the Earthrise is after a few hundred millennia. The windshield difference is massive though. Like, look at this janky geometry. Just a random panel just sort of jutting out. Looks really weird to me, and I'm super glad they fixed this for Earthrise. Something else they fixed in general was the silhouette of the chest. I mean, remember what the Masterpiece looked like and how empty the side of the chest looked on that one? Not an issue here. Look at how cuboid this chest is. It's blocky, it's tubby, it just looks solid, on both versions even. Finally, you too can look at Rat Hide at a 3/4 angle and it not look weird. Finally, the legs. Siege, not having to worry about pegging into an attachable roof, had a neat little bevel to the legs, where Earthrise is a more cuboid shape and less random greeble detail to the leg. Honestly, I'm okay with both versions as they're each aiming for something different, and I feel they excel at what they're trying to do. As for accessories, they each get different one. Earthrise on the left, Siege on the right. The intended use for Earthrise is a big giant shield, which I think is a little weird, but hey, it works. And you get 2 ports for blast effects, or 4 cannons at the end for all sorts of firing patterns. But personally, I'm partial to using this as a rocket pack, either on his arm like a knockoff Galvatron, or on his back for a jetpack proper. At the end of the day, though, I really would rather think of this as a G1 nod in the sense of a removable med sled. Heck, you can even print off Funby Studios treads to really nail home that look. Want to take it a step further in the G1 nods department? Spin that windshield back around and hide the head away to show off his headless gorilla proportions. The other thing Ratchet got was a G1-inspired blaster, but turned sideways. I remember the circle being horizontal, but hey, it's kind of a neat little thing, and I'll take it. All in all, I think it's kind of weird that Ratchet comes with weapons like this, considering the Siege version actually came with useful stuff, like this rocket launcher, with a removable tip that looks like a welding attachment, or even just a straight-up wrench, which I fully appreciate that it came with. It's almost like he can actually, fix stuff. Meanwhile, the other one stands guard like a watchdog while his younger counterpart does repairs. Now, Lifeline comes with a pistol, like just a straight-up pistol. It's clear. I get this is probably a case of not having to retool anything, but her bio is she really, really hates violence, to the point that it makes her sick having to treat soldiers as she knows she's just sending them back out into the field. So what is this, a healing gun? Your hero just get betrayed by a former commander? Heal gun, and the pain is done.
Okay.
Articulation features a ball-jointed head that's mainly for rotation and some side-to-side movement. Up and down is negligible. Shoulder rotation and outward movement with full bicep swivel and 90-degree bend, and a wrist swivel, waist swivel, full hip movement, forward, backward, and out, with swivel and knee bend at 90 degrees. Proportions are such that he can't kneel super well, full ankle movement with full spread bridge, and printed foot assembly grants toe articulation, which is more than I can say for Lifeline. Like, aside from waist rotation and ankle pivot, Thrilling 30 Legends RC is out here fully showing her up. Hopefully I get the motivation to make an RC review one day, because this figure really is worth a buy, and I still feel it's the best iteration of RC from an official level to date, Masterpiece or otherwise. For size comparison, corresponding smokescreens, Cliff Jumper and Mirage, truly the best of buds, a deluxe figure from 10 years ago and a deluxe figure from 4 years ago, leader in G1 Prime, and the size comparison everyone's asking about, Masterpiece Movie Ironhide and Masterpiece G1 Megatron. So that's been my review for Earthrise Ratchet, with guest star Lifeline and Siege Ratchet. He's a great figure with a shoehorned-in pointless character. If you have Siege Ratchet already, I would still recommend this if you prefer Earth vehicles, as it's just done so well with room left for improvement if you really want to take this figure to the next level. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, I'm glad that Mysterious Link worked. I'm glad I have a better Ratchet in my collection, and in general, if you can tolerate the mess that is a modern take on RC but green, I really do recommend finding it whenever it comes in stock wherever you find things. This has been the Lazy Eyebrow.
Hello YouTube, I hope you enjoyed that review. Shout out to General Waluigi as he won an art contest in Discord, and that was his reward, so shout out at the end of this video. If you liked the upgrades to this Ratchet, I've included links in the description and a pinned comment where you can either download the files or print your own as far as the wheels and doors go, as well as in that pinned comment you'll find a link to rmatrixtfm.com where you can even find that keychain that I made, as that's being sold there. So thank you all for watching, hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you in the next one where we're going to get into Earthrise Starscream and the other two Seekers. This has been Lazy Eyebrow.